My schoolmistress of the upper Frist, Thursday 27th. My schoolmistress kept her promise and came today as I was on the point of going out with my mother to carry some linen to a poor woman recommended by the Gazette. It was a year since I had seen her in our house. We all made a great deal of her. She is just the same as ever, a little thing with a green veil wound about her bonnet, carelessly dressed and with untidy hair because she has not the time to adorn herself, but with a little less color than last year, with some white hairs and a constant cough. My mother said to her, "And your health, my dear mistress? You do not take sufficient care of yourself." "It doesn't matter," the other replied with her smile, at once bright and sad. "You speak too loud," my mother added. "You exert yourself too much with your boys." That is true. Her voice is always to be heard. I remember how it was when I went to school to her. She talked and talked all the time so that the boys might not lose their attention, and she did not remain seated a moment. I felt quite sure that she would come because she never forgets her pupils. She remembers their names for years. On the days of the monthly examinations, she runs to ask the director what marks they have won. She waits for them at the entrance and makes them show her their compositions in order that she may see what progress they have made. And many who are now in the grammar school and wear long trousers and a watch still come to see her. Today she had come back in a great state of excitement from the picture gallery, whither she had taken her boys, just as she had conducted them all to museum every Thursday in years gone by, and explained everything to them. The poor mistress has grown still thinner than of old, but she is always brisk, and always becomes animated when she speaks of her school. She wanted to have a peep at the bed on which she had seen me lying very ill 2 years ago, and which is now occupied by my brother. She gazed at it for a long while and couldn't speak. She was obliged to go away soon to visit a boy belonging to her class, the son of a saddler, who is ill with the measles, and she had besides a package of sheets to correct, a whole evening's work, and she had still a private lesson in arithmetic to give to the mistress of a shop before nightfall. "Well, Enrico," she said to me as she was going, "are you still fond of your schoolmistress now that you do hard sums and write long compositions?" She kissed me and called up once more from the foot of the stairs, "You are not to forget me, you know, Enrico." Oh, my kind teacher, never, never shall I forget you. Even when I grow up I shall remember you and shall go to seek you among your boys, and every time I pass near a school and hear the voice of a schoolmistress, I shall think that I hear your voice, and I shall recall the 2 years I passed in your school, where I learned so many things, where I so often saw you ill and weary, but always earnest, always indulgent, in despair when anyone was clumsy with his pen, trembling when the examiners asked us questions, happy when we made a good showing, always kind and loving as a mother. Never, never shall I forget you, my teacher. In an attic. Friday 28th. Yesterday evening I went with my mother and my sister Sylvia to carry the linen to the poor woman recommended by the newspaper. I carried the bundle. Sylvia had the paper with the initials of the name and the address. We went up to the very roof of a tall house and through a long corridor with many doors. My mother knocked at the last. It was opened by a thin, fair woman who was still young, and it instantly struck me that I had seen her many times before, with that very same blue kerchief that she wore on her head. "Are you the person of whom the newspaper says so-and-so?" asked my mother. "Yes, Signora, I am." "Well, we have brought you a little linen." The woman began to thank us and bless us, and could not make enough of it. Just then I noticed in one corner of the bare, dark room a boy kneeling in front of a chair, with his back turned towards us, who appeared to be writing, and he really was writing with his paper on the chair and his inkstand on the floor. How did he manage to write in the dark? While I was saying this to myself, I suddenly recognized the red hair and the coarse jacket of Crossi, the son of the vegetable peddler, the boy with the useless arm. I told this to my mother softly, while the woman was putting away the things. "Hush," replied my mother. "Perhaps he will feel ashamed to see you giving alms to his mother. Don't speak to him." But at that moment Crossi turned around. I was embarrassed. He smiled, and then my mother gave me a push so that I should run to him and embrace him. I did so. He rose and took me by the hand. "Here I am," his mother was saying in the meantime to my mother, "alone with this boy, my husband in America these 7 years, and I sick in addition, so that I can no longer make my rounds with my vegetables and earn a few cents. We have not even a table left for my poor Luigino to do his work on. When there was a bench down at the door, he could at least write on the bench, but that has been taken away. He has not even light enough to study without ruining his eyes, and it is a mercy that I can send him to school, since the city provides him with books and copybooks. Poor Luigino, who would be so glad to study. Unhappy woman that I am." My mother gave her all that she had in her purse, kissed the boy, and almost wept as we went out. And she had good cause to say to me, "Look at that poor boy. See how he is forced to work when you have every comfort, and yet study seems hard to you. Ah, Enrico, there is more merit in the work which he does in 1 day than in your work for a year. It is to such that the first prizes should be given." The school, Friday 28th. Yes, study comes hard to you, my dear Enrico, as your mother says. I do not yet see you set out for school with that resolute mind and that smiling face which I should like. You are still unwilling. But listen, reflect a little. How poor and pitiable your day would be if you didn't go to school. At the end of a week you would beg with clasped hands that you might return there, for you would be eaten up with weariness and shame, disgusted with your sports and with your existence. Everybody studies now, my child. Think of the workmen who go to school in the evening after having toiled all the day. Think of the women, of the girls, of the people who go to school on Sunday after having worked all the week. Of the soldiers who turn to their books and copybooks when they return exhausted from their drill. Think of the dumb and the blind who study nevertheless. And last of all, think of the prisoners who also learn to read and write. Reflect in the morning when you set out, that at that very moment in your own city 30,000 other boys are going like yourself to shut themselves up in a room for 3 hours of study. Think of the army of boys who, at nearly this precise hour, are going to school in all countries. Behold them with your imagination, going through the lanes of quiet villages, through the streets of the noisy towns, along the shores of rivers and lakes, here beneath a burning sun, there amid fogs, in boats, in countries which are cut with canals, on horseback on the far-reaching plains, in sledges over the snow, through valleys and over hills, across forests and torrents, over the solitary paths of mountains, alone, in couplets, in groups, in long files, all with their books under their arms, clad in 1,000 ways, speaking 1,000 tongues, from the most remote schools in Russia, almost lost in the ice, to the furthermost schools of Arabia, shaded by palm trees, millions and millions, all going to learn the same things in 100 varied forms. Imagine this vast throng of boys of 100 races, this immense movement of which you form a part. And remember, if this movement were to cease, humanity would fall back into barbarism. This movement is the progress, the hope, the glory of the world. Courage then, little soldier of the immense army. Your books are your arms, your class is your squadron, the field of battle is the whole earth, and the victory is human civilization. Be not a cowardly soldier, my Enrico. Your father. The Little Patriot of Padua, the monthly story. Saturday 29th. I will not be a cowardly soldier, no, but I should be much more willing to go to school if the master would tell us a story every day, like the one he told us this morning. Every month, said he. I shall tell you one. I shall give it to you in writing, and it will always be the tale of a fine and noble deed performed by a boy. This one is called The Little Patriot of Padua. Here it is. A French steamer set out from Barcelona, a city in Spain, for Genoa. There were on board Frenchmen, Italians, Spaniards, and Swiss. Among the rest was a lad of 11, poorly clad and alone, who always held himself aloof like a wild animal and stared at her with gleaming eyes. He had good reasons for looking at everyone with forbidding eyes. 2 years previous to this time, his parents, peasants in the neighborhood of Padua, had sold him to a company of mountebanks who, after they had taught him how to perform tricks by dint of blows and kicks and starving, had carried him all over France and Spain, beating him continually and never giving him enough to eat. On his arrival in Barcelona, being no longer able to endure ill treatment and hunger, and being reduced to a pitiable condition, he fled from his slave master and had betaken himself for protection to the Italian council, who, moved with compassion, had placed him on board of this steamer, and had given him a letter to the guardsman of Genoa, who was to send the boy back to the parents who had sold him like a beast. The poor boy was weak and ragged. He had been put in the second-class cabin. Everyone stared at him. Some questioned him, but he made no reply and seemed to hate and despise everyone. To such an extent had privation and suffering borne him down and saddened him. Nevertheless, 3 travelers, persisting in their questioning, succeeded in making him unloosen his tongue, and in a few rough words, a mixture of Venetian, French, and Spanish, he related his story. These 3 travelers were not Italian, but they understood him, and partly out of compassion, partly because they were excited with wine, they gave him a few coins, jesting with him and urging him on to tell them other things. And as several ladies entered the salon at the moment, they gave him some more money for the purpose of making a show and cried, take this too," as they made the money rattle on the table. The boy pocketed it all, thanking them with a low voice and with his sad face, but with a look that was for the first time smiling and affectionate. Then he climbed into his berth, drew the curtain and lay quiet, thinking over his affairs. With this money he would be able to purchase some good food on board. After having suffered for lack of bread for 2 years, he could buy a jacket as soon as he landed in Genoa, after having gone about clad in rags for 2 years, and he could also buy carrying a hoe, in short for himself from his father and mother a kinder greeting than would fall to his lot if he arrived with empty pockets. This money was a little fortune for him, and he was taking comfort out of the thought behind the curtain of his berth, while the 3 travelers chatted away as they sat around the dining table in the second-class salon. They were drinking and discussing their travels in the countries which they had seen, and from one topic to another they began to discuss Italy. One of them began to complain of the inns, another of the railways, and then, growing warmer, they all began to speak evil of everything. One would have preferred a trip to Lapland. Another declared that he had found nothing but robbers and brigands in Italy. The third said that Italian officials do not know how to read. "It's an ignorant nation," continued the first. "A filthy nation," added the second. Exclaimed the third, meaning to say robbers, but he was not allowed to finish the word. A tempest of small coin came down upon their heads and shoulders, fell over the table and the floor with a great clatter. All 3 sprang up in a rage, looked up, and received another handful of coppers in their faces. "Take back your money," said the lad disdainfully, thrusting his head between the curtains of his berth. "I do not accept alms from those who insult my country." The Chimney Sweep, November 1st. Yesterday afternoon I went to the girls' school building near ours to give the story of the boy from Padua to Sylvia's teacher, who wished to read it. There are 700 girls there. Just as I arrived, they began to come out, all greatly rejoiced at the holiday of All Saints and All Souls, and here is the fine thing that I saw. Opposite the door of the school, on the other side of the street, With his sack and scraper stood a very small chimney sweep, his face entirely black, with one arm resting against the wall, and his head supported on his arm, weeping and sobbing. 2 or 3 of the girls of the 2nd grade approached him and said, "What is the matter that you weep like this?" But he made no reply and went on crying. "Come, tell us what is the matter with you and why you're crying," the girls repeated. And then he raised his face from his arm, a baby face, and said through his tears that he had been to several houses to sweep their chimneys and had earned 30 soldi, and that he had lost them, that they had slipped through a hole in his pocket. And he showed the hole, and he did not dare to return home without the money. "The master will beat me," he said, sobbing, and again dropped his head upon his arm, like one in despair. The children stood and stared at him very seriously. In the meantime, other girls, large and small, boy girls and girls in the upper classes, with their satchels under their arms had come up, and one large girl who had a blue feather in her hat pulled 2 soldi from her pocket and said, "I have only 2 soldi, let us make a collection." "I have 2 soldi also," said another girl, dressed in red. "We shall certainly find 30 soldi among us all." And they began to call out, "Amalia, Luigia, Annina, a soldo, who has any soldi? Bring your soldi here." Several had soldi to buy flowers or copybooks, and they brought them. Some of the smaller girls gave centesimi, and the one with the blue feather collected all and counted them in a loud voice, 8, 10, 15. But more was needed. Then one larger than any of them, who seemed to be an assistant mistress, appeared and gave half a lira, and all made much of her. 5 soldi were still lacking. "The girls in the 4th class are coming, they will have it," said one girl. The members of the 4th class came and the soldi showered down. All hurried forward eagerly, and it was beautiful to see that poor chimney sweep in the middle of all those many-colored dresses, of all that whirl of feathers, ribbons, and curls. The 30 soldi were already obtained, but more kept pouring in, and the very smallest who had no money made their way among the big girls and offered their bunches of flowers for the sake of giving something. All at once the portress came out and called, "The Signora Directress." The girls fled in all directions like a flock of sparrows, and then the little chimney sweep was visible, alone, in the middle of the street, wiping his eyes in perfect content, with his hands full of money, and the buttonholes of his jacket, his pockets, his hat full of flowers, and there were blossoms on the ground at his feet. The Day of the Dead, All Souls Day, November 2nd. This day is sacred to the memory of the dead. Do you know, Enrico, that all your boys should on this day devote a thought to those who are dead? To those who have died for you, for boys and little children. How many have died, and how many are dying continually? Have you ever reflected how many fathers have worn out their lives in toil? How many mothers have descended to the grave before their time, worn out by the privations to which they have condemned themselves for the sake of sustaining their children? Do you know how many men have planted a knife in their hearts in despair at beholding their children in misery? How many women have drowned themselves, or have died of sorrow, or have gone mad through having lost a child? Think of all these dead on this day. Think of how many schoolmistresses have died young, have pined away through the fatigues of the school, through love of the children, for whom they had not the heart to tear themselves away. Think of the doctors who have perished of contagious diseases, having bravely sacrificed themselves to cure the children. Think of all those who in shipwrecks, in fires, in famines, in moments of supreme danger, have yielded to infants the last morsel of bread, the last place of safety, the last rope of escape from the flames, to expire content with their sacrifice, since they preserved the life of a little innocent. Such dead as these are countless, Enrico, Every graveyard contains hundreds of these sainted beings who, if they could rise for a moment from their graves, would cry the name of a child for whom they gave up the joys of youth, the peace of old age, their affections, their learning, their life. Wives of 20, men in the flower of their strength, octogenarians, youths, heroic and obscure martyrs from infancy, so grand and so noble that the earth does not produce as many flowers as should strew their graves. To such a degree are ye loved, O children. Think today on those dead with gratitude, and you will be kinder and more affectionate to all those who love you and who toil for you, my dear, fortunate son, who on the day of the dead have as yet no one to grieve for.